The sound of crystal meeting marble cut through the reception like a gunshot. I felt the champagne flute slip from my trembling fingers and watched them explode into 1,000 glittering pieces across the polished floor. The string quartet stopped, mid-note. The laughter died. Even the air seemed to hold its breath. Then her voice tore through the silence. "You stupid, clumsy country woman. You ruined my dress. Do you have any idea what you've just destroyed?" I dropped to my knees. My hands reached for the broken glass without thinking, the same way they had reached for spilled milk on linoleum floors back home. My voice came out small and breaking. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. I was just trying to help. Don't touch me." The slap came fast and hard. The sound echoed like a whip crack through the vast hall. I froze. My hands hovered above the floor for one impossible moment, before I raised one slowly to my cheek. The sting spread across my face like fire. I could feel the heat of it, the shape of her fingers already blooming into my skin. My eyes were wide. I could not blink. I could not breathe. Somewhere above me, I heard my son's voice. Low, cold, dangerous. "Victoria, what did you just do?" "My name is Connie Lawrence. I am 68 years old. I am a widow. My husband, Thomas Lawrence, died when our son was 14 years old. The coal took him slowly, piece by piece, filling his lungs with black dust until he could not breathe without pain. The doctors called it I called it murder by inches. He had survived a cave-in years before that left him with a limp and a cough that never went away. The black lung finished what the mountain started. We lived in a coal mining town in West Virginia, a place that had once been full of life and noise and hope. By the time Thomas died, it was a graveyard for the living. The mine had closed. The young people left. The old people stayed because they had nowhere else to go. We lived on disability checks and minimum wage jobs and memories of a time when men came home dirty but proud. Now they just came home broken after Thomas died. I was left with debts I could not see the bottom of. Medical bills stacked up like gravestones. The hospital wanted its money. The pharmacy wanted its money. The funeral home wanted its money. I had a son who was smart, too smart for this town. And I knew that if I did not find a way to keep him in school, the mountain would take him too, so I worked. I worked at the diner on Main Street, the one with the cracked vinyl booths and the coffee that tasted like rust. I stood on my feet for 8 hours, sometimes 10, carrying plates of eggs and bacon to men who could barely afford to tip. My feet ached, my back ached, but I smiled, and I poured the coffee, and I took the coins they left on the table, and I did not complain. When the diner closed, I drove to the next town over and cleaned houses for the families who still had money. I scrubbed their toilets and mopped their floors, and washed their windows until my hands cracked and bled. I used so much bleach that my skin turned raw. At night, I mended clothes for the neighbors, sewing patches onto jeans and stitching up torn hems for a few dollars here and there. I hid my hands in my apron pockets. I did not want Liam to see them. I did not want him to know how much it hurt. He was a good boy, a smart boy. He studied while I worked. He read books from the library that were held together with tape and hope. His teachers told me he had a gift. They told me he could get a scholarship if he took the advanced placement courses. They told me he could go to college. But the courses cost money. Everything cost money. I remembered the day I went to the high school to ask for an extension. It was a Tuesday in October. The leaves were falling and the air smelled like smoke. I wore my best dress, the navy blue one I had worn to Thomas's funeral, and I walked into the principal's office with my head up and my hands tucked into my pockets. The principal was a man named Howard Brennan. He had thin hair and thick glasses, and a way of looking at people like they were something stuck to the bottom of his shoe. He sat behind his desk and folded his hands and listened while I explained that I was short on the course fees. I told him I could pay in installments. I promised I would not miss a payment. I could hear my voice shaking. I hated that. I hated the way he looked at me with pity and arrogance mixed together like oil and water. He leaned back in his chair. He said, "Mrs. Lawrence, I understand your situation, but we have rules." I stood there. I waited. I did not beg. Not with words. But I know he saw it in my eyes. Finally, he agreed. He would give me an extension. He made me sign a paper promising to pay every 2 weeks. He made me feel small. He made me feel like I was asking for charity instead of a chance. What I did not know was that Liam was outside the office. He had come to bring me my coat. He heard everything. He heard the principal's condescending tone. He heard my voice crack when I said thank you. He saw me walk out of that office with my shoulders straight and my hands still hidden. He saw my shame and my dignity all at once. He never told me he was there, but I know now that it changed something in him. It lit a fire. The months passed. Liam studied harder. He barely slept. I kept working. I kept my hands busy. And when the time came for him to apply to community college, when he needed money for his first semester, I told him I had been saving up. I told him not to worry. I told him everything was fine. What I did not tell him was that I had sold the last valuable things Thomas left behind. His stamp collection, the one he had started as a boy and added to every year. his grandfather's pocket watch, the one with the inscription on the back that read, "Time is the only wealth that matters." I sold them to a man in the next county who paid me in cash and did not ask questions. I took that money and I put it in an envelope and I gave it to my son. I told him it was savings. I told him his father would be proud. He believed me. He took the money. He went to college. And I went back to work with my cracked hands and my aching feet and my heart full of hope that he would make it out. That he would be something more than this town. That he would breathe air that did not taste like coal dust. I was right. He did make it out. But I never imagined that years later, I would be standing in a marble hall in New York City with champagne on my hands and a red mark on my face, wondering if I had made a terrible mistake. Liam came home to West Virginia in the spring. He was 37 years old by then. He stepped out of a black car that looked like it cost more than our house, and he smiled at me like he was still that boy who used to sit at the kitchen table doing homework under the yellow light. But he was not that boy anymore. He was the founder and CEO of a billion-dollar company. I had seen the articles. I had heard the neighbors talk. My son had built something out of nothing, and now he lived in a penthouse apartment overlooking Central Park in New York City. Things more appropriate for New York. She said it sweetly, like she was trying to help, but her eyes were cold. There was a dinner party, a small one, just 8 people, friends of Victoria's. I sat at the long table and tried not to feel out of place. The silverware was heavy. There were more forks and spoons than I knew what to do with. I picked up the wrong one, a large silver fork. It slipped from my fingers and clattered onto the plate with a sound that made everyone stop talking. Victoria laughed. It was a tinkling sound, light and airy. But when I looked up, her eyes were sharp. "Oh, Connie, darling," she said. "We're using the Tiffany silver, not the tin forks from the diner." The table laughed. It was polite laughter. Uncomfortable laughter. Liam smiled. He did not hear the venom in her voice. He thought it was a joke, a harmless little tease. But I heard it. I felt it settle in my chest like a stone. I picked up the fork. I set it down in the right place. I did not say anything. Victoria smiled at me from across the table. I smiled back. But something had shifted. Something small and sharp. A crack I could not see but could feel, spreading beneath the surface. The dress was the nicest thing I had ever worn. It was simple, pale blue, elegant in a way that did not draw too much attention. Liam had insisted on buying it for me. He took me to a store with soft lighting, and women who spoke in quiet voices, and brought you champagne while you tried things on. I had never been in a place like that. I chose the plainest one I could find. Even then, it cost more than I used to make in a month. The wedding was held in a grand hall at a museum, not a church. A museum. The kind of place where the floors were polished, marble, and the ceilings were so high, your voice echoed if you spoke too loud. The room was filled with people I did not know. Billionaires, socialites, women in gowns that shimmered like water, men in tuxedos that fit like they were sewn onto their bodies. There were photographers everywhere, cameras flashing, people holding glasses of champagne and laughing in that easy way. People laugh when they have never had to worry about money. I stood near the back. I tried to stay out of the way. I smiled when people looked at me. I nodded. I sipped water from a crystal glass because I was afraid if I drank champagne I might do something wrong. I watched Liam up on the small stage. He was giving a toast. He looked so happy, so proud. I wanted to feel happy for him. I wanted to feel like I belonged here, but I felt like I was standing in someone else's life. That was when I saw the boy. He could not have been older than 20. He was carrying a tray, a massive tray piled high with champagne flutes. Too many. The tray was shaking in his hands. I could see the strain in his shoulders. The way his fingers were white from gripping the edges, he was going to drop it. I knew he was going to drop it. I moved without thinking. It was instinct. The same instinct that made me catch a falling glass before it hit the floor. The same instinct that made me steady a chair before someone tipped over. I walked toward him. I reached out. "Let me help you, son," I said. "That looks too heavy." He looked at me. Relief flooded his face. I put my hands on the edge of the tray. I steadied it for a moment. Everything was fine, and then I stepped back. My heel caught on the thick rug. I felt myself stumble. I tried to catch myself, but it was too late. The tray tipped. The glasses slid, and then they were falling. All of them. A dozen champagne flutes tumbling through the air in slow motion. They hit Victoria's dress. The champagne splashed across the white silk like a wave. It soaked into the fabric. It dripped onto the floor. I stared. I could not move. I could not breathe. The entire room went silent. Victoria looked down. Her mouth opened. Her face twisted into something I did not recognize. And then she screamed, "What the hell did you do? You stupid, clumsy backwater woman. Do you have any idea what this dress costs? You've ruined my wedding." I tried to speak. My voice came out small and broken. I'm so sorry. I was just trying to help." She stepped toward me. Her hand came up fast. The slap was sharp and hard. It echoed through the hall like a crack of thunder. My head snapped to the side. The sting spread across my cheek like fire. I froze, my hands hovered in the air. I could feel every eye in the room on me. "Get away from me. Don't you touch me?" The string quartet stopped. The silence was suffocating. I slowly raised one hand to my cheek. It was hot. I could feel the shape of her fingers burning into my skin. My eyes were wide. I could not blink. I could not think. And then I heard his voice. "Victoria, what did you just do?" Liam's voice was low, dangerously quiet. I looked up. He was standing at the edge of the stage. He had been The glass was still in his hand, but his face had changed. The smile was gone. His eyes were hard and cold. He stared at me, At his mother, kneeling on the floor with champagne on my dress and a red mark on my face. Victoria turned. I saw panic flash across her face. For one brief second, she understood. She realized what she had done. But then her expression shifted. She made a choice. She doubled down. She forced tears into her eyes. She let out a hysterical sob. "Liam, she ruined my dress. My wedding. I don't know how she even got in here. She must be one of the catering staff. Get her out." The lie hung in the air like smoke. I felt my chest tighten. She was pretending. Pretending she did not know me. Pretending I was no one. Just some clumsy woman who wandered in off the street. Liam did not move. He stared at her. His expression was unreadable. And then he walked. He walked right past her without looking at her. He came to me. He knelt down beside me. He took off his tuxedo jacket. It was expensive, tailored, perfect. He draped it over my shoulders. His hands were gentle. He stood. He turned back to Victoria. His voice was calm, steady, but there was ice beneath it. "She is not the staff. She is my mother." The room gasped. Whispers erupted. Cameras flashed. Victoria's face went white. Liam walked to the microphone on the stage. He picked it up. The feedback screeched for a moment and then went silent. He looked out at the crowd, at the billionaires, the socialites, the press. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, "thank you for coming. The reception is over." He turned. He looked directly at Victoria. "And so is my marriage." The video was everywhere. I did not watch it at first. I could not. But Liam told me. He said it had been uploaded within minutes. Someone at the wedding had filmed the whole thing. The slap, Victoria's scream, his words at the microphone. Within hours, it was on every news site, every social media platform. They called it the wedding slap. TMZ ran it on a loop. Page 6 wrote essays about it. Strangers who had never met me were talking about me like they knew my life. Victoria was destroyed. That is the only word for it. The luxury brands she worked with dropped her within 24 hours. Chanel, Dior, brands I had never heard of. But that apparently mattered in her world. The charities removed her from their boards. The magazines stopped calling. Her family, her old money, East Coast family, could not protect her. They tried. But the internet does not care about old money. It does not care about connections. It cares about stories. And Victoria had become the villain in a story that people could not stop watching. I became something else. A symbol, they said, of quiet dignity, of humility. The press dug into my past. They found the coal mining town. They found records of Thomas's death. They interviewed people I had not spoken to in years. Neighbors who remembered me working 3 jobs. The principal at the high school who suddenly claimed he had always admired my dedication. They wrote articles about sacrifice, about mothers who gave everything. The more they learned about me, the more they loved me. And the more they loved me, the more they hated Victoria. I did not want any of it. I told Liam to make it stop, but he said he could not. He said the story was bigger than us now. He said people needed it. They needed to believe that kindness mattered, that cruelty had consequences. I did not understand. I just wanted to go home. Liam took me away from New York. We went to a small house he owned upstate. It was quiet there. No cameras, no reporters, just trees and silence. I asked him not to sue Victoria. He wanted to. I could see it in his eyes. But I told him no. I told him she had already lost enough. He did not argue. He just nodded. But he did not need to sue her. He had already ruined her with one sentence. "I choose my mother." That was all it took. The world had chosen sides, and Victoria was on the losing one. Months passed. The noise died down. We returned to the penthouse. Liam changed. He scaled back his work hours. He came home earlier. We cooked together. Simple things. Pasta, roasted chicken, things I used to make back home. We watched old movies on the couch, black and white films with actors I remembered from when I was young. He would fall asleep with his head on my shoulder, and I would sit there in the dark and feel something close to peace. But I could not sit still for long. My hands needed to be busy. They always had, so I started volunteering at a soup kitchen in Brooklyn. It was a small place run by a church. They served lunch every day to whoever needed it. Homeless people, families struggling to make ends meet. People who reminded me of the folks back home. I worked in the kitchen, I chopped vegetables, I stirred pots, I served food with a smile. It felt good. It felt like something I understood. One afternoon, I was ladling soup into bowls when I looked up and saw her. At first I did not recognize her. She was standing in line with the others. Her hair was unwashed, pulled back in a messy ponytail. No makeup. Her face was pale and thin. She wore a cheap coat, the kind you buy at a discount store. She was painfully thin. Her eyes were hollow. It was Victoria. She saw me. She froze. For a moment I thought she would leave, but she did not. She stepped forward. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. And then she started to cry. Not the hysterical sobbing from the wedding. This was different. Quiet, broken. I don't know why I did it, she whispered. I was so blind, so obsessed with status, with being perfect, with being seen. I ruined everything. I ruined your son's wedding. I hurt you. I hurt myself. I don't know how to fix it. I don't know how to live with what I did. I stood there, holding the ladle. I looked at her. Really looked at her. She was not the woman who had slapped me. She was not the woman who had made cruel jokes at dinner parties. She was just a person. A broken, lost person who had made a terrible mistake. I did not hug her. I did not tell her it was okay. Because it was not okay. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But I could do something else. I set the ladle down. I went to the counter. I filled a bowl with hot soup. I took a piece of bread from the basket. I brought it back to her. I placed it in her hands. Everyone makes mistakes, Victoria, I said. My voice was quiet but firm. Forgiveness is easy. It's living in a way that doesn't require it. That's the hard part. Now eat. You look too thin. She stared at the bowl. Tears streamed down her face. She nodded. She sat down at one of the tables and she ate. I went back to serving soup. I did not look at her again, but I felt something shift. Something small. A crack that might one day heal. That evening, Liam came home. I was standing on the balcony. The city stretched out below me. A sea of lights and glass and steel, but I was not looking at the skyline. I was looking at a photograph, the only one I had brought from West Virginia. It was old, faded. The edges were worn. It was a picture of me and Thomas. We were young, covered in coal dust, smiling. We looked tired, but we looked happy. Liam came and stood beside me. He did not say anything at first. We just stood there together in the quiet, and then he spoke. "What are you thinking about, Mom?" I looked down at my hands. They were wrinkled now, spotted with age. The calluses were still there, faded but not gone. They would never be gone. I held them up in the light from the city. These hands that had scrubbed floors and mended clothes and picked up broken glass. These hands that had worked 3 jobs and begged for extensions and sold the last things my husband left behind. These hands that had built a life out of nothing. I smiled. "I was just thinking," I said. "These hands. They were once black with coal dust, then raw from lye soap, but they built a good man. That's all that matters." Liam took my hands in his. He held them gently, like they were something precious. And then he kissed them once on each palm. He did not say anything. He did not need to. We sat down together on the balcony chairs, mother and son. We talked softly as the city hummed below us. He thanked me for raising him, for teaching him things that money could not buy, for showing him what it meant to be kind, to be humble, to choose love over pride. I looked at my son, this brilliant, successful, good man, and I thought about all the years, all the sacrifices, all the pain. And I realized something. It was worth it. Every single moment, these hands had built something that would last longer than buildings or wealth or status. They had built a legacy. They had built love. And that was enough. There are hands that build empires. And there are hands that build souls. We live in a world that celebrates the first and forgets the second. But I have learned this. The truest measure of a life is not what you accumulate, but what you give when you have nothing left to give. My mother's hands were never soft. They were scarred by labor and cracked by sacrifice. But they held me when I was small. They worked in the dark so I could walk in the light. They bled so I would not have to. And in the end, when the world tried to humiliate her, those hands did not strike back. They did not curse. They simply waited quietly, with a dignity no amount of money could ever buy. Forgiveness is not weakness. It is the hardest kind of strength. It does not erase the wound. It does not pretend the hurt never happened. It simply chooses not to let bitterness win. My mother taught me that. She taught me that love is not loud. It is not performative. It is quiet. It is patient. It is the soup placed in trembling hands. It is the jacket draped over shaking shoulders. It is the choice to see someone's humanity, even when they have forgotten their own. If you are reading this, I want you to do something. Call your mother. Call your father. Call whoever raised you with calloused hands and tired eyes. Tell them you remember. Tell them it mattered. Tell them before time runs out. Because one day, all that will remain are the hands that built you, and the love they left behind. If this story touched you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a comment about the person who sacrificed for you. Subscribe to Grandma's Stories if you believe stories like this still matter, because they do, and so do you.